I've played countless games in my lifetime, but there are a select few I can confidently name is not just a personal favorite, but one of the best games of all time. In this case, that'd be the original Hollow Knight, an indie Metroidvania with a deceptively colossal scope and unexpectedly challenging content. It's a thoroughly brilliant game available at a shockingly low price, so much so that the announcement of a sequel generated a spectacular level of buzz. How many awards and announcement streams has this game hovered over like a specter? How many people tuned into indie Nintendo Directs just for a chance of getting more Silksong news? Who could have anticipated that a day would arrive that would herald the short arrival of Silksong? Just a few weeks to prepare for one of the biggest indie games in this current generation, with so much hype surrounding it that other indie studios would rapidly shift their release dates, partially to avoid losing sales but also to play the game themselves. Greetings, Pilgrim. It's been a while since my last review, hasn't it? Having recently finished the game and given myself time to digest my experience, I can say this game was everything I was expecting and more. I knew it would take me a long time to finish, perhaps a tiny bit longer than most. Silksong presents a strong evolution from Hollow Knight, thanks in large part to Hornet's expanded moveset, and the new enemies designed with her in mind. This is a much faster game, which naturally begets tougher challenges. While this is all natural, I have some thoughts on the way the challenge manifests. The first game was quite the challenge on account of the tough platforming sections, powerful foes, and the natural difficulty of navigating a world like Hollow Knight. In a sense, it's evocative of Dark Souls, the game similarly set during the death throes of a once great kingdom, having lost a battle against a malevolent force brought about by the king's hubris. Farloom follows on and in the aftermath, set an indeterminate amount of time afterwards. Now, dear viewer, you may be asking, how can Silksong escalate the difficulty of a game like Hollow Knight? What does it demand of the player? That's quite simple. It asks you to die. The game owes its difficulty to a cocktail of different design elements and themes, all lovingly blended together by the hands of Lucifer himself. If you told me this was Team Cherry's development team, I'd be inclined to believe you. Our first ingredient is enemy damage. In the first game, the majority of enemies would deal only a single mask of damage, with only the more challenging bosses and enemies doing 2 masks worth. Silksong escalates this by having more frequent enemies that deal 2 masks of damage as early as the second area in this 50-hour game. This extends to some hazards, and in some rare instances, you might get hit mid-air and then get knocked back into the hazards for 3 masks of damage. The recovery time also feels shorter, allowing you to be hit multiple times and killed very quickly. The main thing that excuses this design choice is the adjusted healing in Silksong that's more risk-reward than ever. It heals 3 masks at a time, but only when the silk bar is charged enough. But getting hit while healing cancels the heal and fully expends the spent silk, so it emphasizes careful play and learning the bosses thoroughly. Sometimes, however, he'll just misread the trajectory of an attack and be struck mid-heal with the same inevitability of the night following the day. I've mentioned hazards, so I think it's time to expand on where they really become a factor and discuss the next ingredient of Lucifer's concoction: platforming. Hollow Knight's platforming was already tough, but Silksong finds ways to humble you as early as the tutorial zone. The real fun, however, starts in the marrow. Just like the first game, you can downstrike metal spikes and enemies to refresh your jumps and dashes. However, you can't poke off thorns or other non-metallic hazards. On top of that, Silksong starts you with a diagonal attack that's harder to aim than it looks, so I do hope you get used to diving skull first into a bed of thorns for the first few hours of the game. And as you unlock more zones and abilities, the platforming escalates in difficulty by throwing in creative new enemies at you. One such zone is the infamous Hunter's March. This is the home of the Underhands of Farloom, who move swiftly and can burrow underground to launch surprise attacks. They're quite resourceful too, laying numerous traps to catch travelers unaware like you. You barely have a moment to catch your breath, and that's because of the reliable shot crowd clearing the way. If you don't defeat the boss before she leaves, you get 2 extra obstacles to deal with. And the boss? At the heart of the zone lies a real monster. A beast of calamity whose existence threatens Hornet like few others, a being deserving of scorn so severe that the only answer is a swift execution. I speak, of course, of the savage Beastfly. Through the works of some strange witchcraft, this overgrown fly is one of the toughest bosses in the game. Savage Beastfly takes a simple moveset with easily readable double mask damage attacks, adds in some periodic reinforcements, and becomes one of the hardest bosses in the entire game. And they chose this boss to give you a rematch within a lava arena, with lava spitting ads necessitating the lava bell accessory to lessen the headache. The runbacks in this game will serve as our next ingredient. They're a staple in Soulsborne and Souls-like games. However, they seem to be getting rarer with games like Elden Ring spawning you outside the boss room. No running through hordes of enemies, no repeating platforming challenges, just you throwing yourself against the bosses repeatedly as the goddess intended. Silksong follows a more traditional style with platforming challenges and tough enemies barring your path to the boss. Ironically, I enjoyed the Last Judge runback because it got into the rhythm of properly dodging enemies and because the boss is one of my favorites in the game. Maybe I just lost my mind a little, but fortunately I regained my sanity in time for my least favorite. Actually, do I even need to use subjective language for this one? For what may be considered the worst area in the game, one whose runback throws in the worst aspects of everything? To better elaborate, I think it's time I talk about 3 very special connected zones and the misery they induce to make up our next ingredient. Sinner's Road, the Purified Ducts, and the vile water. The creatures of Farloom often prove difficult to fight, but few compared to the demonic cockroaches that greet you on your arrival to Sinner's Road. They're tough to kill, can jump up platforms and sneak up on you, and if they grab you with their attacks, that's 2 masks gone, or you're pinned to the ground. Make it past them and you'll face the flying foes feeding these ferocious furless vermin. And do be careful while fighting them, lest you plunge into the disgusting maggot-infested water that can infect Hornet. To clear them from her body, you need to spend a heal, rest adventure, or dive into clean water. Or die, but that's less than ideal. The benches in these zones are few and far between, and Bile Water is especially cruel. Bile Water taught me something. Team Cherry actually loves their players. Just in the same way Tatsuki Fujimoto loves his characters. You can feel the love in every inch of the zone. The maggot water, the dart enemy jump scares, the constant traps, the enemies that explode on death and then respawn after a short delay, the platforming, the big spitter enemies who deal 2 damage even on contact. There are a whole 2 benches in the entire zone, with one being hard to find because for some strange reason most players wouldn't think to dive into the cholera water because a random spot would lead them to the only bench actually close to the boss. And even then, the runback itself is still tricky to execute without getting hit or falling back into the water. There is an item that exists to make the water much easier to traverse, but it involves backtracking to the Citadel and going by the Memoriam to access the Purified Ducts, which throws in the spicy additions of fine enemies that can eat you and the angry moss chargers. What joy! Bile Water's boss is easily the worst in the game, through a combination of the zone he lives in, the runbacks to him, and the general experience of fighting him. He makes for a very special ingredient. Tell me, dear viewer, do you enjoy the prospect of fighting waves of enemies emerging from the infested waters, evading swinging spikes and losing one of your crucial heals to the Doom Water? Would you like to face a great big Boda bug who tries to spit acid at you, who inexplicably starts firing soul blasts at you, who tries to inhale you and swallow you whole, with the knowledge that failure means starting again? Is this what you waited 6 years for? There's 3 kinds of bosses in games like this one. Bosses with carefully crafted movesets fast enough to test your ability, but not so much to feel overwhelming. Bosses who focus more on fine spectacle, wowing the players through stellar and memorable visuals in the name of pure story and atmosphere. 3. This abomination. Grohl is not the kind of boss designed to be fun or a high point of the game. Every part of him is designed to annoy and disgust, much like the bile water he lives in. He's not the type of boss that makes players want to include vanilla movesets and have an honorable duel, but the type of boss that pushes players into using overpowered cheese builds just to delete it from the screen and go back to the actual fun content. The type that makes people question if the game they're playing is even fun. Incidentally, Grohl is required to progress the game to reach Act 3 and see the true ending. Amidst all this is still a boss I've yet to speak on, one whose presence shadows the entire game. I speak not of the Weaver of Silk, nor the abyss that slumbers beneath the Citadel, but something far more powerful and sinister than them. I speak of capitalism. Souls games have a fairly simple formula. Kill the bosses to get souls, use souls to level up, use stats from souls to kill more bosses, and don't die twice and lose unspent souls. Silksong doesn't have levels, but it does have an assortment of tools and key items spread across numerous vendors all over Farloom. Additionally, most structures like benches and fast travel points need money to access, and somehow it feels way more expensive in Silksong than the Hollow Knight equivalents. I often feel pettiness because of how few rosaries enemies drop, and so much of the game requires rosaries. Alongside the new currencies, the overalls to combat bring with them a new resource to manage and sell in shell shards. Shell shards are one of the two ways the game balances tools. Tools are now categorized by the types of passive and active events they provide, and are equipped to crest will provide new gameplay styles. Now, these tools introduce a strange puzzle that's new to the Hollow Knight series. Tools have ammunition, and that ammunition is a limited resource you can refresh by visiting a bench and using up shell shards, but those shell shards can run dry when fighting a particular boss, leaving you with just silk spells at your disposal. This means you may resort to grinding if you want to keep fighting a certain boss in your full strength, and that, along with the rosary issues, is a major pace breaker for the overall experience. You could choose not to use these tools, but they are an invaluable asset to your boss fighting strategies, like the cockfights with the nail tags. So, if you stir all these elements together, what do you get? One of the best games of the year is what you get. By some manner of shaman snail witchcraft, Team Cherry have concocted a game that, despite a bottomless supply of frustrations, is a fun and beautiful masterpiece worthy of being the sequel to Hollow Knight. I heartily recommend it to any fans of challenging games, Metroidvanias, or even players of the first Hollow Knight, though that is somewhat of a moot point since anyone interested in most likely already played the game this past month. Either way, an emphatic 9.5 out of 10. But one thing still troubles me. If Team Cherry said they thoroughly enjoyed making the game, citing that as the reason they didn't make many public updates, what exactly did they enjoy about making the game? Did they have smiles on their face when they completed Hunter's March, Firewater, the Secret Coral Tower Gauntlet? Thank you for watching, dear viewer. My next video will be a tier list of how much I enjoyed the bosses in the game, or more accurately, how much they destroyed me and my soul. If you're interested, please like the video and subscribe for more, and until then, this is Serge signing off.